Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rich. Today on the bench I've got this Bernhuf from the 1940s. It's a beautiful triple date, which I've been looking for a long time. I found this one on eBay and it was listed as for parts and repair, which normally means it isn't working. Well, this one was barely working. It'd run about 15 seconds or so. But then the pushers for the dates are all, one's missing, the other one's so badly worn out that I couldn't get it to work. So what I'm going to have to do, stay tuned further in the video, I'm going to replace those pushers. And also this watch has got radium on the dial and on the hands. So I'm going to show you how to remove the radium. So stay with me as we get into this. But first I got to get it out of the case. And now there's a little retention ring. Not the best quality retention ring I've ever seen, but it works. Now the case is a little rough around the edges, but it'll do. You can see where the pushers are missing on the inside. So I'm going to have to track down something that'll fit in those holes. So first thing I want to do is get the hands off. Now I am wearing a mask here because this thing is radioactive, so to speak, and I don't want that dust floating up in the air. But what I'm going to do is line up those hands, get this little sheet of plastic. Now what that does is protects the dial when I lift off the hands with those levers. And I'll just put these over in safekeeping. The first thing I want to do is put my little anvil in a protective plastic bag, because I don't want that radium getting into my anvil. So I'm just going to lay my hand, they're a little bit magnetized, but I don't want to put them on the demagnetizer until I get that loom out of there, because it's a little, I don't want that dust up in the air. Now I am wearing a mask. I do have a ventilator or a filter running behind me. But you can see these guys are a little bit radioactive, but then when I get them more centered in the tester there, it starts to really take off. And of course the screen keeps going dead. There's a screensaver, but there you go. You can hear that alarm, and you see once it hit 100 CPM, the alarm went off. Now I'm putting the hands in an acetone bath, and what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the amount of airborne radium in the room. Because this stuff, once it's underwater, it can't really fly around the air. Boy, it's coming out really quick. I thought I'd have to soak that stuff for a while, but not the case. I get that minute hand cleaned really quick. I'm just using my tweezers to kind of clean it out a little bit. And then I'll go to the hour hand. And oh my gosh, you can see it just fell out as one big chunk. So acetone is definitely the way to loosen that old loom up real quick. But now you can see all that old debris from the radium. Now I'm going to keep it in that liquid, and I'm going to put that liquid in a jar that I can dispose of in a proper area, because I don't want that going down the drain or being poured out in the yard or anything like that. Now the radium on the dial I really can't do anything about, so I'm just going to have to live with that. But these hands had the strongest signal, or highest CPM between the two of them. So I got those out. They've dried off now, and now I'm putting them on my little balance stand, and I'm putting the hands on upside down. So what I'm going to do is relum them. So this is kind of the activator, this white stuff. And if I squeeze it doesn't want to come out, does it? Oh, there it goes. Way too much, but hey, I haven't used this stuff in a while, and it all kind of came out at once. And then here's the actual luminous material. Now this is actually tritium, but tritium is not dangerous to you like radium is. And the radium they used, in the 1930s, 1940s, or into the 1950s. And then they realized people were getting sick, and mainly it was the girls that were painting the hands back in the day, because they would lick the brushes between installing the loom. Not a good idea. So they got some sick people back then. Now, of course, I want to make this thing a little bit darker color, but here again, a big old lob. If you can notice, I only need a little tiny bit. And what I'm doing is just making this white loom a little bit more aged looking, so it looks more age appropriate for its date. Now I'm just going to lightly spread this across the gap between there. As you can see, it kind of fills the gap. You get it just the right consistency, and then as it dries, it will shrink down and look perfect when you're done. It's a really neat process when you do it right. Now I'm putting the loom on the back of the hands because it's going to kind of stick out a little bit further on the back. And I'm just going to keep messing with it here until it gets a little bit smoother. Put like the second coat on it because it's a little thin there because the stuff shrinks quite a bit. There we go. Nice and easy. I love it. Okay, I think that's good enough. Now, this is what it looks like when it's dry. So what I've done is I'm putting it under a UV flashlight here, and you'll be able to see it real quick. See how it glows? It looks brand new when it's glowing, so it's nice and bright. I'll be able to see these hands at night. But when it's daylight, it'll look old. Now, of course, the first thing I want to do is get that balance out of there. That's always good practice when you're working on a watch, because those things can get damaged really, really easy. Now, the watch doesn't look that dirty, but I got to figure out what's going on inside, because something is stopping it from going more than 15 seconds when it runs. So we'll get the train of wheel bridge off of there. It's a little stubborn. Not bad. Well, those pivots are pretty dirty. That could be slowing it down. Now these are the little stands that hold the dial on. They kind of look like a helmet. And this one didn't really want to come off very well. Had to fight with that one a while. But now you can see the two dials that do one that does the month and one does the date. Now on the outside of the dial, there's 31 numbers that go all the way around. Now that fourth hand actually points to the date and changes every day. So you get the actual month, day of the week, and the date on this. That's why they call it a triple date. Now I normally like to give the history of the watches that I do on my channel, but this one has really stumped me. I have researched it for several days now, and the only thing I can find out about Bernhuf is that it was started back in 1886, and it went on for almost about 90 years. It finally went out of business in the 1960s. And from what I can tell, they were a case manufacturing company. And they would make the cases, and then they would go and buy the movements from AS. This is actually an AS 1291 movement with the triple date, because there are other manufacturers that I've seen on eBay, watch brands, identical to the T, except they just have a different name on the dial. So actually, they were just, I guess you'd call them a reseller. Now, if you have more information, I would sure appreciate it if you would put it in the comments in this video, because I would really like to know more about this watch, because I'm planning on keeping this and putting it in my collection, and so it would be nice to know the history of it. So I'm going to give this watch a full service, which means I'm taking it completely apart. Then I'm going to put it to a cleaning process. Actually, it's a 4-step cleaning process. And then I'm going to put it back together and put lubricant on the jewels and get everything running smoothly once again. And hopefully that will solve our problem it stopping every 15 minutes or 15 seconds. Because I'm not seeing anything that would really is broken on this watch. It just seems like maybe there's a bunch of grime on pinions, on center wheels and things like that. And as I get down to the center wheel here, let's snap that little bridge off. There's this sub bridge, and there's a little copper colored wheel in there. Not sure what that one is for. It just takes the power from the mainspring. Now I'm over on the dial side, and I'm going to get these date wheels. That's the day wheel, and then get the month wheel off of there. So as I tear this watch apart, just wanted to answer some questions because I've got a lot of comments from people saying, Rich, what do you look like? I don't know anything about you. So what I did is I started a website. It's wristwatch-rescue.com. Now you can go over there, and I've got a little bio about myself and a picture of myself. All of the videos that I have up on YouTube are over there too, but they just link you to YouTube. But I just started that to just kind of help cross-promote the channel. I also wanted to say thank you to all my subscribers. We just passed a milestone, to me anyway, of 62,000 subscribers during this time that I'm making this video. And it really amazed me. I sure appreciate you guys. You know, if you're new to the channel, just hit the subscribe and a like, and helps me keep going. We'll keep this channel going as long as I can, because I know there's a lot of watches out there that need to be rescued. There's a couple of pushers on this one. One does the date and the other does the month. And there's just one spring between the two of them here. That's what I'm taking off right now. So it'll be interesting to see how well they work, because when I brought the watch to the bench, the pushers were one was missing and the other one was completely worn out, which is really odd because I wouldn't think somebody would be pushing those buttons that often over the last 90 years, because or 80 years. That's about how old this watch is, somewhere in the 1940s. Now, one of the things I'm doing is there's a lot of screws on these pushers and the springs and all these levers on these dials. So I'm putting a lot of them back in to their original holes before I send it to the cleaning machine. That way it just keeps track for me, keeps better track, I should say, for me. And there's a lot of spring levers too that engage with these dials on the back of the date and the month. Now, here I'm going to get this upper bridge off so we can see what's underneath. Okay, there's I guess that'd be called the date wheel, because those big teeth, it's going to only turn around and click that over once a day. So there should be 31 teeth on that wheel. Now this looks pretty normal in our hand, but it has an extra wheel on top of it. It didn't come apart either. So I'm going to use my little cannon pinion remover tool, get that center cannon pinion off. It's an extra long cannon pinion because they added that upper bridge that has the date and month wheels. So that cannon pinion had to go further through the upper bridge. So let's take a look at this center wheel. Yeah, a lot of grime on that. That's maybe what's slowing or stopped the watch. So now it's time to take the keyless works apart. Now, the keyless works gets its name from pocket watches, because back in the day, pocket watches had keys to set the time. But when the wristwatch came along, that wasn't practical to carry a key around. So the manufacturers start calling it keyless works because they came up with this unique little design. Now the watch does have 17 jewels, and it's also got Inca block. jewels. In other words, the shock system that protects the balance from when you drop it. You can see the bottom of the anchor box there on the bottom of that plate. There it is again. But what that does is a little brass spring that holds that jewel. And if you were to drop the watch, it would absorb the shock because the little brass spring lets the jewel move. Whereas before that was invented, they would break because the jewels did not move. So either the balance staff tip would break off or the jewel would crack and shatter. So it was a great step forward in watchmaking. And they started making an appearance in the 1930s. So this watch, it didn't become standard until late 50s. But so the nicer watches like this one had the Inkabach. And it was actually a brand name. And a lot of manufacturers, like Bernhuf here, actually puts the Inkabach brand name or logo on their watch dial because it was a big deal back in the day, especially in the time period that this watch was made. So here I've got to get the mainspring out of the barrel, just using both fingers. Now I don't use finger cuts on this because it'll chew them up. But here's all of your parts laid out so you can see there's a lot of pieces and parts to this watch. So I'm going to put them in the cleaning baskets here. I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch it too long. And then they go into the bigger baskets. And I put a lid on that one and take it out to my garage where I keep my cleaning machine. Now, I want to let everybody know that I have started a Patreon page. And what is Patreon, you ask? Well, that's a place for you to support people like me. And I actually wanted to give a shout out to Pavia, the newest member of Patreon. But I'm going to leave a link down below. So if you want to support me, now it's not just me. Patreon supports hundreds of thousands of different creators. They're not just all YouTube, but they're artists, they're singers. Now that the watch is out of the cleaning machine, we need to put it back together. So I'm going to start with the mainspring barrel and the mainspring. I've got this little German-made mainspring winder, and I know a lot of people ask me, where can I get one of these? Just found it on eBay. It's from the 1930s or 40s, I think. So it's quite old. But they do come up from time to time on eBay. So if you just keep a watch for it, I actually bought it from a fellow in Poland 3 or 4 years ago, and it's the best mainspring winder I've ever found. This guy, I can go either way I want to go, does it quick, and once you get it all into the little barrel on that plate, you just kind of tuck the end of it in with your tweezers, and then you take your barrel and just slide it over the top and just snap it down from the back with your fingers. Very, very simple. And works like a charm. Now that we got the mainspring back in there, we just need to put the arbor to the mainspring in it. Now the arbor is actually what connects to the mainspring and then takes the power from the spring and spins the barrel around. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of 8200 on the spring and on the top of the arbor just to keep it from rusting up or moving slowly. Then we'll just gently set this lid back on. And I've got this little tool that it's sitting on. It's a little $10 tool, indispensable. You just snap that lid down, just pinch it a little bit. There you go. Works really simple. Now, here again, I'm going to put a little bit of the 8200 on the other side of that barrel. Just make sure it moves nice and smooth. Then I'm going to put it on the main plate where the barrel just touches it ever so slightly. Now, first thing that goes in always is the mainspring barrel. Now, this would technically be the second wheel. I think it's just an intermediate wheel to get the power from the barrel. It really doesn't connect to anything else. So it's a little bit different. Then we're going to put the third wheel or the main wheel, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put a little bit of 9010 on the sides of that. Now this is the wheel that the cannon pinion actually connects to on the other side. So it just slides down through that center shaft. Yeah, there we go. Get a little wobble. And then there's this little sub bridge. Just kind of snap this down. I noticed that these bridges on this watch are a tight fit with these little posts. It's not just the screw that's a tight fit. Now you can see the barrel will send its power down that train of wheels. And of course, I'll put a little bit of 9010 Mobius in the jewel. And I'll do it on the other side too. And I'm going to do a little bit on this center wheel. There's no jewel on that. And this is technically your fourth wheel. And it connects there under the bridge. Now the escapement wheel is actually always the one with the funny little teeth. And it's the one that actually interacts with the pallet fork. And when you're listening to a watch or watching a watch, it's what gives you the tick and the tock. So we just gently set that in there. And then here's your second wheel, which would technically, I guess, be your fourth wheel, or fifth wheel, I'm sorry. And just gently slide it down through that shaft. It goes all the way through the plate and comes out the other side. And the second hand will attach to it when we flip the watch over. So now here's the trainer wheel bridge. We just kind of gently maneuver it in place. All of these wheels have to get into their pivots in the jewels before you go to screwing it down. Now this one went pretty easily. I didn't have to fuss with it very much. Then we've got your mainspring barrel bridge. But always remember to put your setting lever post in before you put this on. As you're getting into watch making, it's a common thing to forget. But I'm putting a little blue grease, the 9501 Mobius grease on that, so it will turn nice and easy. Then just dropping this down in place. A real simple one to put on. There's really nothing to line up other than the main spring arbor. Now when I spin the back of the barrel, you can see everything spinning nice and fast, especially that escapement wheel. And that's what it's supposed to do. So I'm putting a little bit of lubricant on the crown wheel post because there's this little washer. And it's very common on this type of movement to have that washer. And then I'll put a little bit on the outside of the washer too before I put the crown wheel on there. Now the crown wheel is what actually takes the energy from the crown and the crown stem. As you wind it, it goes the clutch on the other side in the keyless works, transfer the wind up to this, and then it transfers it over to the ratchet wheel, which in turn transfers it to the mainspring in the barrel. It's kind of a neat little system. It's been around for many years. Now, I'm going to put the click spring back in, but this click spring is so delicate and it's difficult to get in the hole. I'm using a little bit of Rodico. That's what that green putty stuff is. It doesn't leave a residue. It'll hold things. It'll pick up things. It's great stuff. So it's holding that click spring in place before I can get the click down there and get it pushed over, and then put the click spring screw in place. And then once I'm done, I just pull it off and it's good to go. And then we can put the ratchet wheel on top. And now the ratchet wheel always has that square hole in the center because it goes on top of the mainspring arbor. Now we're working on the keyless works. First thing in is that sliding pinion, and then this is the clutch wheel. Here again, I'm putting the 9501, that blue grease, because that's a heavier duty grease. Now this clutch is what connects to that crown wheel over there. Now I'm also putting the blue grease on the crown stem, just to keep the friction down between parts. And then here's another little intermediate wheel. Now this is going to take the power from that sliding pinion. I'm going to put a little grease here because this is where I'm going to put the yoke. And that yoke goes, the tongue of that yoke goes down into that sliding pinion. See how it pushes it back and forth? And then it pushes, when you put the spring on, it pushes it into that intermediate wheel. But first, I got to get the setting lever in. Now, to do that, I just turn it over and screw it down. As you can see, it's moving here, but the yoke is not moving at all because the spring's not in there yet. But before I put the spring in, I want to put a little of that blue grease in there because that's a high friction part. Now, I'm going to slide that yoke spring in, nice and gentle. I just don't want to lose it. It has been known to fly. And then I'm going to put a little bit of the 9010 Mobius on the pinions of the minute wheel. Just drop that in there because that's going to take the power from the sliding pinion into that intermediate wheel. This is what's known as the motion works. In other words, it's going to make you turn, set the time. And then this little cover plate is actually your setting lever spring. You can see the little arm that comes out of that. And that gives you a little spring action. The rest of that setting lever spring is just a cover plate to keep the motion works and the some of the keyless works in place. Now I didn't tighten it down already because I want to push it into the setting lever. There you go. Now I've got a lot of grease on there. I'm going to take that off with Radico. And then just tighten it down after it's connected. And there I'm just dabbing up the excess grease. Now you can see how that spring clicks back and forth. Now it's time to just slide the cannon pinion back on. And like I said, the hour hand and the minute hand are going to connect, or actually the minute hand is going to connect to the center pinion, or the cannon pinion. Now we can drop the hour wheel on, and this is the wheel that the hour wheel will snug fit. And then this is I guess you'd call this your intermediate, or your date wheel, because it's going to take the turn from the hour wheel and slowly go around, and see that dial looking thing on top will turn the date. Then we can just put this plate back down. The plate just covers everything down. There's just 2 screws on this. And now I'm going to put these little setting springs back in. These will actually engage with the teeth on the bottom of the month and the day wheel. So I'm going to put those in first, and then I'm going to pull it back, set the month wheel in there, just gently. Yeah, once I get the screw in, I can let go with that other set of tweezers. There you go. Now you can see as I turn, it's connecting, and once every 24 hours, it'll flip that thing, that date wheel, that day wheel. And now they're doing the same thing over here for the month wheel. Now this pushing lever, it's got 2 screws. I've got to get it under. And then it'll slide on this bottom one, but that top screw's got to come out, as you can see. And then I'll just slide the tip of that underneath. Now the way this guy works is when you push the button on the outside of the case, it's going to slide forward and move that brass wheel there, which will in turn move the month wheel, which we haven't put on yet. So we'll just kind of tighten down the back, and then we'll put the second screw in. This is the one that will slide. Now I'm going to put a little bit of grease where this other one goes. Here again, that's that 9501. And now I'm setting the spring in there, and this screw holds the spring down. So it's a 2-way spring. It springs on both ends. And then here is the pusher, the second pusher here. And that spring is what kicks both of them back out. So you see how that works? It pushes in and the spring kicks it back out. Now I just need to hook the other side of the spring over that little knob on the other pusher, and that'll kick it back out also. And just tighten that down. Now I'm going to put a little of that 9501 back here on this post. Of course, as usual, I put too much on, but I always take it off with the Radico. See how that pusher works? And here's how the other one works. Now I'm going to put this month wheel on. And then all of these wheels have a tension spring. And that's what I'm putting on here. Once I get it in the teeth, I tighten it down. Now it's time to get this watch running again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the balance in one dip. Here again, I don't put my balances in the wash cycle because they're delicate, and I've seen them get destroyed by those L&R machines. But once it's clean, I'm just going to blow off the excess, and the paper soaks up a lot of it. Now I need to put the pallet fork in there very gently. We're going to get it in its pivots, in between its two posts. And then here's the pallet fork bridge, which gently sets down on top. Now I want to make sure everything's in its pivot before I screw that down, because it's an easy way to snap the pivots. Now here's the moment of truth, favorite part of this whole process. Putting the balance, there it goes, it's working. Nice. Now, before I can finish with this, though, this is the cap jewel from the balance. Now I've cleaned it, and you can see the tiny little bit of oil I put in there. That I set the other part of the jewel on top, and the capillary action keeps it together. Then I bring it over to the balance, set it on top of that pivot, and here again, that's that Incabach protection system. You see there with that spring, how it's swung up. Then I'm just going to flip it back over, and then get it back under the tongue. Now the spring will is under tension. As soon as I get that last, there we go. Yeah, that's good. Now let's see. We'll give it a little push and see if it works. There we go. All nice and up and running. Beautiful. I could watch that for hours. Now, after it's run in for a while, it's even more powerful and working even better. Now it's time to put the dial back on. So we just get the feet in the dial holes. Snug them down, and then just tighten up those two little funny looking screws. Now we're going to put on the date hand. Now this hand actually points to the 30. See how there's 31 numbers all the way around that dial? So we're just going to gently push that down. And then we'll put the hour hand on. Now I'm going to put it at 12 because I've got the watch just at the point where it's going to change the date. Then we'll put the minute hand on. And then we'll just make sure nothing's dragging. And then here is your seconds hand. Now, here's the case. See these two stem tubes? They got to take them out because they're worn out and they're not working. So I've got a special tool for that. And basically, it's just a little punch, which you slowly tighten down. You can see it in there. And you get it lined up, tighten it down, And these tubes will push outward. So if I'm pushing from the inside out. So I'll do that to both sides. As you can see, there's the old tube. Now, I found these new pushers. Of course, they didn't fit. So I went and got some JB Wells, something I've used for years. I'm working on metal parts. It's what it is an epoxy two-part. It's epoxy with metal in it. One of them is a binder and one is the metal. And then you just mix it up. And then once it's starting to get a little tacky, just like, a typical epoxy, I'm going to put some of it inside that hole in there. I'm going to line the inside of that hole. And then I'm going to take these new pushers and just insert them in the hole. Hopefully there's enough of that JB weld in there to hold them. And it'll take about 15 hours for it to set up. So what I'm going to do is take some Radico so they'll stay straight and set up straight. Now with the pushers set after overnight, I can case the watch back up. So I'm just going to line up, flip it over on my case cushion here, put the stem back in, line it up, and then get my little case holder and push it in there. Now there's no case screws on this guy, but once it's in there, it's pretty snug. And see those little tongues that stick up on the rim? They put pressure against this back of this case, which then in turn pushes down on the movement and keeps it snug in the case. And the last thing to do is put it up on the time grapher. Well, this little machine will tell you how healthy the watch is. Well, minus 3 seconds a day, really good. 240 aperture for an 80-year-old watch, not bad. And 0.08 on the beat error, pretty good too. Now, I put this beautiful NATO watch band on this, and I really love this, and this is one of my favorite bands. Now, this Bernhuf turned out much better than I thought it would. The new pushers look great, and the hands look original and old, but yet they'll glow in the dark. Beautiful watch. And as always, I wanted to thank you for coming along, and see you on the next one.